doing, man?
Good. Dude, good. How are you, bud?
Good to see you.
It's good to see you, man.
Yeah.
How's you back in Santa Fe?
Santa Fe, baby. And then I take off. I go to Fort Myers next weekend and get to see my dad. And then there's a Comic-Con out there also, so that's cool. And then I think I go to Brussels at the end of the month. Which
Oh shit, for another Comic-Con, huh?
yeah.
Man, people how about getting a
Good to
gig in
travel.
Star Wars, dude? What
I
the
know.
fuck?
It's wild, right?
That's wild.
It's a thing that it seems unreal in as much as, like, being inside the fishbowl. It's hard to know, like, what it all looks like. But man, I watched it. I just finished the finale an hour ago, and what a what a masterpiece! The whole thing. I mean, I thought last week was so exciting, and I was like, I don't know how they top it to go out, but I thought they finished it really well. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, I think this is going to be my next. I'm hoping Sunday I've got some time to binge watch, and I'm just going to plow through
Yeah,
basically the entire rest of the season. The
I
whole
knew I had to get
Mandalorian
through it, or
thing's been
else.
so fun, man.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was like the most. I guess it's like eras. A guy asked me last night. He goes, "What are your top three favorite Star Wars movies?" And I go, "The first three."
Yeah.
I mean, bar none for me. But that's an era thing because those were in my heart before the. But if I were born 20 years later, it might be those three or something like that, right? But for me, this dovetailed, and the way I think Andor did too. They did a great job with dovetailing with the first episode we ever saw, and then the way the Mandalorian came and Boba Fett also, and fleshed out this little character, these bounty hunters, this obscure people that caught everybody's interest, and John Favreau's too. And then he goes, "You know what? I'm going to write a story about this."
Yeah, what it's amazing, right? To flesh out this entire universe.
Yeah,
And that's what's really great about the whole Star Wars universe, right? Is that it is that depth
yeah,
that you're coming into even a concept in the first three films of this already moving world that you can get to explore a lot of things and it's all gonna line up in different times. And so I love seeing the expansion of stories like that.
yeah. Me too. And the you know how it's woven, consequences woven into that. Like they're all living under deep consequence of moral choices in every different character throughout every moment, and that tension of that about this matters, and these codes they live by as Jedi or what. It's like as a kid, man, I was like, that kind of mythology just took me. It was so dope to see, and now I'm still a little kid with it.
I'm sure, man. How's it, so all the gear, like your character, right? Um, I mean, one, I think it's rad to see you doing roles like more and more from
Right.
power and everything else. Like I'm love that it's just not Tate getting killed and everything I'm
A
watching
good
anymore, man.
transition. Well, and speaking of that, this shift, I mean, to be immortalized as a hero with this character is just incredible. It's like
Unreal, dude.
trippy. It's
What
trippy.
an unbelievable experience to,
Yeah.
decide to be part of acting and make a move into this from your background. Anything's possible.
Yeah. I mean, and
I
it's eras too. It's like I got to say goodbye to the old thing I'm doing and go into the next thing, and whether that's with fighting or with whatever it's like. What is it that you're doing now that's you're turned on by now, and moving into it's just it's a natural shift for me in that way. And I
one of the things that, I like chatting with people about on the podcast, right, with Not Dead Yet is I think being able to transition from one thing to the next in your life,
right.
that there's going to be more than one interest. What I found early on with sports and then lost, really opened up the rest of the world for me to chase these other things, that being a podcaster, a communicator, a brand builder, whatever that means. So how has that gone for you? I mean, hell, man, I know your story, and from being immortalized as a Mandalorian character and also doing armed robberies in the past, that's a fucking hell of a journey, dude.
It's been a lot. It's that thing about turning. When you talk about turning corners in your life, it's like all the thing. What stops you? Well, always me. It's always that, right? It's always my fears, trepidations, whatever past experiences are controlling me that maybe I don't even know about. And so really to assess yourself, it becomes, you got to have a necessary process for that as a human. And if you're not assessing yourself, it's like it's hard to find out where you took your hits and why. And even if you're going through, I trip on this thing. I watched Hamilton with my mom, and at the end of it, I thought, everybody in this thinks they're a good man. There's not a person in there that's like, I'm the bad guy, the king. Everybody thinks they're doing the best for what they're up to. And that's the way ambition is. And we get
Mm.
that way as humans. And it's good to have that and to drive. But without me knowing, no matter how good a guy I am, when I'm driving like that, you scuff people's toes. And so that reflection back and trying to get your life right to go into these next things fresh and whole without these things hanging back of, I need to make apologies or amends or correct behaviors or whatever. If I never reflect, I never look at behaviors I need to correct. And that's why, fuck, man, I appreciate guys like you so much because, there's a time in life when personal development gets really important to somebody or it doesn't, but man, to be in conversation with people that matters to is the utmost importance because all the other stuff, Star Wars, championships and Highland Games, it's wallpaper,
Yes.
maybe stuff that built me to some degree or whatever, but it's like, that's transient. And so what's happening here? How am I centered and rebalanced as I enter these new eras? And so that attention to self, I think it gets more important in that way.
Yeah, I love that, man, because those are the simple things, right? But where I find that shared community now is with, anyone that's overcome or decided to set eyes on a lofty goal and fucking hunt it down until it was done.
Yeah.
And in that process, look, in my first run of it, as well, man, I wasn't the nicest to everyone in my life in that pursuit. I
Right.
feel that it's pretty more grandiose than it is in reality.
Yeah.
And then, the next act of your life gets to be a different one of trying
Yeah.
to make the most of myself and
And my
be
allowance for others and my understanding and desire to understand instead of going, you're wrong. It's like, no, no, no. Everybody just has a different, we can disagree and nobody has to be wrong. But
right.
what's important is that I can understand your perspective. And if we have the right relationship where we respect each other, fuck, we can grow with each other in that and maybe have different ideas, or
And I think
allow
it's
people
really
to hold
valuable
their
to
own.
hold hold, conversation with people in person. It
Yeah,
gets really tough with as much as we move to being text based
it's
that,
wild.
we're losing 99% of the nonverbal communication that we learn takes place. We don't see eye contact. We don't hear tone. We read things in the context and the framework that we're already sitting in.
Yeah.
And so, man, I think this is one we've got to kind of sort out on the tech front that otherwise it gets really isolating.
Well, I feel like that really has happened through COVID. I feel like we've been trained into that, right? That's almost by design, you could say, you could make an argument for. And it imbues fear. It imbues questions about your fellow humans around. And so being out, I mean, it's like I've had to do like coming back from head injury and all that, and just being isolated with all the things. It's like a retraining of myself to, go out, be gracious and loving, and look people in the eye. I mean, you can bring a comfort to folks, and I can't. I have to. It's like that whole idea of pirate life. I got to pirate my life back. I got to pull my attentions from all these different places, trying to pull them that want me to be scared of this, want me to think something about it, and then I can maybe contain my own heart and soul and curate that, and that's the best I can do for my community. And whatever happens in the Ukraine is not my business. I don't even know what the truth is in it. For God's
Right.
sakes, you know what I mean? I mean, so
I know that there's
you're
probably a
lost
bunch of people dealing with shit that it isn't about them.
for sure, for
And
sure.
it's about a real small few
Yeah,
trying to play the business that is running countries.
yeah.
And like any giant entrepreneurs or giant CEOs, right? Like there has to be some level of ruthlessness to doing that
Mhm.
because you're protecting the idea of the company and not just,
Yeah.
the employees of it,
And
which we are the employees of the country.
right. It's an interesting thing because we used to have the recourse of like voting is less important, right?
Sure seems it.
There's not an armed rebellion happening. There's like you're slowly squeezed into this position. When blockchain comes, they'll be able to close your money. I mean, it's like so many hands. Turn your car off while you're driving. What like all these little fingerprints from government into our personal lives. It's never happened as strongly. It's wild, and also it's so strong that we can't stop it because the Stockholm syndrome or something has
Right.
happened. It's like Aldous Huxley talks about versus 1984, right? A Brave New World is like, Orwell's all like Big Brother's watching and all that. We feel that or whatever, but
Yeah,
then
but it's amazing that we handed the keys over to Big Brother,
and
right?
that's
Like
what
that's the
that's what Aldous
crazy
Huxley
part.
talks about. He goes, you are paying for your own imprisonment in this and that's kind of where we are, and it's kind of unavoidable because people are attached to fear enough in the majority that the people that are go-getters and going to do the next thing are being actually, for the first time ever, pulled back and handicapped by those that are fear-based, saying, no, your breath is offensive to me. Or, I mean, and not that you need gum, right? That I think that
Right.
you can kill me and my health is now your responsibility. It's these bananas, unsustainable things that they're tricking people that don't think it through into believing, and those people get a vote just like everybody.
Yeah, and look, I think, there's a lot of stuff that I can look at there, right? Like, especially say with the older crowd that is,
Yeah.
still the majority and making the laws and all this. I can see where they just don't have the ability to decipher information, right?
Yeah.
That through most of their lifetime, like the only stuff coming on TV, like I think they really believed was proofread and was from like a source that was trying to be helpful. But I think at this point, man, the cat's out of the bag so bad, realizing that like if it's on TV or if we're listening to it, then it has to have a goal of keeping people listening to it
Mhm.
because that's how the capitalism thing that we've all decided to back really goes. And so everything is generating ad dollars to whatever the next thing is. And so we've also shown through social media and tons of testing that we respond more to negative bullshit than we ever get stoked
Right.
on good stuff. And so everything has now used that tactic as the selling point,
We
which
call it
keeps us more in
clickbait.
fear,
Is
more
the
locked
soft
down,
play.
more avoidant of each other. And yeah, and then what amazes me is that people don't want to take the accountability of being able to say, well, fuck this.
Right.
I'm going to make some different choices and go spend time around people I want to be around and do the things, but instead want the same people that got us here to trust them to sort it the fuck out for us. Like that's
Right.
fucking crazy.
Right.
Like once I'm aware that my government operates with malicious intent, like I'm not fucking interested anymore, man.
Right. Yeah.
And my fucking eyes on you.
Yeah. It's a wild thing, man. And it's a trip too when you look at, COVID really showed us that we have royalty, right? I mean, those they Pelosi doesn't live in a neighborhood of her
No.
constituents. I mean, it's not that. It's crazy. It's a crazy deal. And like you said, separation is because without unity is like, I mean, just like Mando, without unity we fall.
That's it. Just like Mando.
Yeah, I
We
think
get him in office, I think.
that news thing started happening, I think, with OJ. Like Geraldo Rivera started in the earlier '90s being like sensational, like the National Enquirer on TV, and
Hmm.
then they had OJ happen, right? And he's in the Bronco, and I remember watching for hours. It was on TV at work of just a guy driving 25 miles an hour down the 405, and people watched it all day. And when they found that out, it wasn't. It was shortly a year or something like that. And CNN has their own channel. The next day, Fox has their own channel. It's 24-hour news. And so that's when it really went into full stream business. And then you see stuff like, you know, the country of Yemen buys a ad basically that is couched as if it's a news story and sells it to CNN. And you see that they're in business like that. And you're like,
Right.
this is insane, man. And then
Man,
the
I,
fact
I
is what
had
we,
something the other day like that completely fucking unlocked, and I haven't, god damn it, I haven't fact checked it, so this may get me. But either way, it was something like the city of Chicago sold like the parking meter rights to a company in Saudi Arabia.
wild,
And so like this company in Saudi Arabia gets all the parking meters because they sold the rights to them for like $200 million like lump sum.
right?
And this company will make like $1 billion off of it over the course of this
Wild
contract.
deal.
And I
I
was like,
heard,
holy fuck, that's for sale. Like that's a thing that we're allowed to just auction off to the highest bidder as
yeah,
like a city.
yeah. Or a national park. I mean,
Weird.
you look at the holdings that China has in America, it's wild. They talk about TikTok wants to do like distribution centers like Amazon and match their warehouses. Well, that would be weird to have a country like that to have footprints like that in America. Like that's wild.
Yeah,
But
we
it's all,
wouldn't take, granted we do it other places.
yeah. I mean, it's business, and it's the first time. That's the crazy part. There was the guy when Putin met with China's leader, and he said in closing, things are going to be very different in the West, and changes that should have been made 100 years ago are going to be made. What does that mean? Right? It's like, I feel like we're all on the cusp of this, and then there's all the people like my mom or whatever that's like, I'm not hearing that. We're safe. This is America, and this is what it is. But it's like it feels like it doesn't not feel sketchy.
No, there's definitely something different. And look, man, maybe this is just one of those things that comes with growing into this age. And also finding the
Well,
illusion that the
technology,
sky is fucking falling, and every generation has had that moment too, that shit's going down the tubes, right?
right?
I hope not to be the case of it, right? But
I hope not too, but I think that the technology piece of it, where people have hard enough time being people anyway, and the confusion that it adds to their life to be attached to the phone, I think is dangerous, because it does mutate the way you look at things, and
it
I,
absolutely does.
it's all of that, and
I mean, fuck, man. If I'm really honest, I wish mine wasn't as attached to my
of
emotional
course.
feelings as it is. Whether that's how a business is doing or what's getting a response or X, Y, and Z.
I remember when I was pissed when they put the iPod on the phone. And I was like, I don't want those together. I want to work out when I don't need all, and they're like, no, it's easier. I'm like, I don't want all the comforts y'all are giving me. Like, I've been reticent about that and now it's like there's a monopoly. I can't live actually without my phone. Right.
No, no, you can't. Right. Have you read Terrence McKenna's Food of the Gods?
Just pieces of it.
Okay. So like toward the end of it is he's talking going kind of through time from the Sumerians all the way to current, and I guess he's kind of in the 70s, 80s where the book got written. And he's talking about things that, drugs used to incapacitate people, and
Mhm.
how they tried to study psilocybin and tried to study all these other things, and what they found with heroin or cocaine or any of these other things. And he wraps up with like the number one drug that we have found that is able to control people and keep them locked in a state of that the controller wants is television. We never expected this thing to do what it could do.
Mhm.
And then, because of that, right? Like what we've done because of the invention of TV and that media in our house and having contact to it, that it's so short form now that it has to be on all the time.
Right.
What would be the next best plan except get us to carry a TV around with us at all
Sure.
times?
Yeah. That
Like, how
pokes
else
you.
do you fucking occupy someone's mind?
That pokes you all the time. Hey,
Always.
we're paying attention to you. Pay attention to us. And it's all that. And
No,
then
it's
you think about
brutal.
it, you think about what programming is, right? It's interesting that the television chooses that as what they call their programs, right? It's,
Sure.
it's not a veering of like, hey, look at this. Like all this stuff is happening right now. We just talked about and more, whatever. It can be terrifying to get into. But
Well, I
the
mean,
movies,
even look at like what I look at kind of the lessons that TV and that culture teaches us, right? Like,
mhm,
I think about TV shows that I was more exposed to, which was like, Married with Children, right? I mean, how many people fall into the stereotype that, sex ends after marriage and that it's just kind of this downhill spiral of the American male after fucking 30?
well, and that's written at a time when somebody's sour about their dad and they're writing about what their dad, and so you're seeing these
Hmm.
eras of what the writers in Hollywood are like at that time. But you look at what's up right now, and there's a lot of movies and television shows about climate change and the disaster that's coming and all that, which is important to look at all these things that are occurring that affect us as humans, but that it looks diversionary in the light of what's going on right now, right? And so it's all that thing of how to put a solve on somebody's worries about one thing, point them in another direction, and then we can get an agenda through, because climate change is really important this year in the elections,
Right.
is how some people are seeing it. And it's like, it's almost not fair to make motion pictures that are
No,
like,
and it's a bummer, right? Because you can poll us and then we'll say that this is one of the issues. And next thing you realize, we have four films coming out in a similar way that can be leaned one way or the other. And
yeah,
especially as divided as we've gotten, right? Like it's almost, if I know what superhero is leading the show in this thing, I can tell you which of it's left or right as far as the
right,
votes go.
yeah,
And like that's a fucking bummer
it's
that
bananas,
people want to be that fucking predictable and that easily figured out by the next person that meets them. That if I stand for this, that means the other 9,000 things I must stand for.
right.
Such shit,
You
dude.
ever mess with Chat GPT?
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, I like it.
that's the thing too, that it's like a friend is like, they already know you. That it already knows, it already had. I don't care that you haven't signed in. I don't care that you haven't met. It knows you already. It already has most of your proclivities and what are you, all the stuff, man. And it's a wild, so it's an exciting, wild time. But there's also like all these things about when novelty happens, downstream events we don't think about. like
Mhm.
about what may come. We're like, let's build a nuclear reactor on the biggest fault line in the world. It'll be fine. And money often pushes away good sense, and we're such commerce based in that way. It's almost like our government is like, we want to make a better bottom line on our corporation also by America. I'm still dying to know how much was spent on the vaccine. This
Who
free thing
knows,
for
man?
us. I'm dying to know.
Brutal, right? And
When you look at companies that went from billions of dollars to trillions inside a year and a half, I want to know how much that free thing cost America.
oh yeah, I'm sure. And we managed it really well. I think it could be possibly one of the most mismanaged things of all time.
I wonder if we'll ever know truth on it.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
I doubt it, right?
They say it travels eight
I
times
mean,
faster.
especially because it only was something that, in the grand history of things, we're talking about 4 years.
Yeah.
It'll just be a fucking blip that we'll never ever really
Maybe
discuss.
so, but maybe the echoes will resound for a while.
Yeah, I think the echoes will. Like, I,
Yeah.
I think that thing and that shift is going to be a huge catalyst of a lot of what's going on,
Yep.
and how we've shifted because of it. I think as a culture, we shifted a ton. I think our own ideas of who we are shifted a ton. And I think some of the wool's been pulled off of, like, people aren't interested in doing the bullshit jobs
Well,
for,
and look at all the availability that's open for different jobs than have ever been before. It's for a hustler, man. Like if you're sharp and you want to
yeah.
learn new skills, you can make it crack.
Yep.
Especially
There
for
is.
creators. Like fuck, Jardine just has been writing nonstop for 4 years. And we put together a short film that he's taken to festivals all over and got all kinds of awards for. He's got a feature written behind it, but it's like that kind of thing is more available to people now than ever before. It's like if you're a creative and you want to get out there and make it work, the tools are there, and also it's not only the tools, but the ethos of culture is helpful now more than I mean, anybody that bitches about it hasn't been alive long because it had been very hamstringing, like and or before 2006 maybe it was like it was dark. People weren't supporting each other. Now you see it everywhere. You
No.
see it in comedy shows. People are all supporting anybody doing whatever they're
Oh
doing.
man, it was cutthroat as fuck, especially like any
There's only
type of
so many,
creative industry. There
yeah.
was no jobs.
There's only so many spots to win. There's all this scarcity built into it, which is also not true. So I think that, yeah, in that you could get agency in your life, right? It's like just Jordan Peterson talks about, I think, about being safe enough to be able to have your voice, to be able to have actual freedom of speech. That he says, so that I can have enough money to generate to take care of my family if I speak truthfully and I don't have to worry about the university's going to fire
Right.
me. But if I'm not fortified like that, I don't have a voice. I don't have
No, it's
truth.
really
Like,
scary, man. It's really scary for me to, like, I always look at those type of things of, like, who am I giving a vote to in my life, right?
mhm.
Like, whether that was, with, anything, right? That, like, does my university or do the people I work for get to decide what I'm allowed to say? And, like, man, I'm not interested in giving a vote to someone else to decide what I get to do, what I get to say.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in being an asshole, right? Like, I
I
believe
know
there's
that. Yeah,
consequences.
yeah. That being
There's,
said, I'm totally open to hearing like, "Hey, man, this lands on me like this," and I'm like, "Fuck, I
yep.
didn't mean that." I'm totally open. I'm not here to offend or to hurt or
No,
this or
no,
that.
of
But it's
course
like,
not.
if we can't speak with veracity, then we're talking about a fantasy. We're agreeing that we're living in the ether, and it doesn't. And that I'm not willing to. It's just like I'm not willing to sit and listen to somebody talk about how helpless they are or
Right.
something like that. Man, I need you to be strong, and it's just not true how you're looking at this. And I mean, it's like that. It's like I can't sit with the lie of that.
No, it's really tough. And, I know for me, even something as simple as journaling, like, I don't know if that's a practice you keep, but for
Yeah,
me, man, I run so fast up top, just being so ADD and all over the place, that allows me to build some awareness around a certain thought and then become better at how to explain it so that I doesn't fucking lose it in translation, right? That,
yeah,
like, I can work a little bit of the crazy out of it over time so it's actually useful and helpful information for someone.
yeah. The act of physically writing on paper for me is so helpful. And just instead of the thought, which I'm reflecting on with my own consciousness that made the thought, it might not think that thought is crazy. But in another perspective later in the day, I might, when I write that down, I disconnect enough to go, oh, well, all right, this isn't the way to look at You can work things out. You can work your
So
mind
is
out.
journaling something you've done a lot of?
Yeah. Yeah. And then lately, this last year, I've been doing, you know, um, like letter writing to myself.
Mm.
things like that. Yeah,
Like to the past or to the future or?
to the past, and then things like remember this, like to the future, I guess a little bit.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Yeah,
I like that a lot, man. What kind of got you started down that road?
being broken,
Being broken.
right? It's like
Yeah.
you come up against these things that you know. I feel like trauma. I was thinking about this the other day when I was doing the dishes. Trauma is like dishes. It's just like the dishes. And if I make some eggs and I got yolks and shit on there, and I go to the sink right away, and that's cool. It's so easy. It just comes right off. And trauma's like that. Physical trauma, man. If I rip my shoulder, if I go and I get it adjusted, I get massage therapy, I get electrodes put on, I do all the things. I take. The quicker I do that, the better I come back to full steam, right? And if I let it go, it gets to be something that I take care of for the rest of my life. And emotional trauma is like that, except it's blind because you're just going through it, you're hurt, whatever it is happens, and you just walk through it and think, I got stronger. But it's as sticky as the eggs. You leave that shit in the sink for a decade or something, and it's like, I didn't even know this affected my life in these ways. So there's a lot of that stuff about looking at like original fractures, I guess. And I think when I got banged out, was knocked unconscious on a show and accident for like 5 minutes. I'm just telling your people. But after that, like a lot of my thinking changed about like what is it to look at? What does self care look like? What is like all that kind of stuff? And so that's when I started reflecting on in that kind of way about things, and that's when I started writing those letters. Was I think it's like it's important to ensure, coming back from the vulnerability of a head injury, it's like I didn't feel safe anywhere. I never knew what anxiety was before. I thought it was like weak people. I didn't get it,
Mm.
and but I couldn't walk into a grocery store for 8 months. You know what I mean? Because it was like,
Just overwhelmed.
oh yeah, it's all these with, and nobody gives a shit about each other. It just looked. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I went like 6 times and sat in the parking lot. Went up to the door twice, turned around. I just couldn't do it, and so I was like really not confident, right? It's like I'm
No,
in
I
a
bet that's
spot.
got to be crazy for to hear that, like, right, from a guy that's fought in front of people and
Right.
everything that you've lived through, right? That this shakeup of this gray fucking goo that's inside of our skull,
And that's
changed
what happens.
everything.
You become not yourself. And so there you are in a head injury, and you don't even know that it's affecting you like that because it's how you look at life. And all you know is that you're a stranger to yourself in your own skin. And the only answer is I got to shoot myself in the chest because I can't see any freedom anymore. Like that's the downstream effects of what happened in a broad overview, I guess. But to build confidence back, to build back, you know, abilities even. I mean, from stuttering, neurogenic tremors, all that shit, to get back into a place like 3 days ago, I started kickboxing again. And, but I've been scared of that for 4 years almost because I thought, man, just the concussion of it, the sound of it, like, because if a siren went down, it would break. It was like the sensitivities of that head injury were crazy. And so the rebuilding of that it's been a trip. I mean,
I
even to
mean,
be podcasting again, I dropped my podcast. Like, I'm like,
you're
I
right.
can't express shit. I just checked out.
I mean, man, what a crazy identity shift for
Yeah.
someone like you, such a strong, resilient, tough fuck who's survived so many things to all of a sudden feel really fragile. That like the
Yeah.
grocery store is too much.
And that your follow through is not there. Like I told Ruben for 2 weeks I was going to go and kickbox with him, right? And I'm like, and then I told him that I was like, and then I'm that guy. I'm the guy that's like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm like, I've never been that fucking. I said it makes you loathe yourself, you're like, how am I this, And I'm not. I'm walking through it in a different way, but it's like I got to reorganize that shit, and I got to. I mean, thank God I got a lot of people to talk to that understand and all of that, but it's the road it is, and that kind of stuff I think is so important. And without that confidence, it's tough for me to hold space for my community. It's tough for me to be what I want to be to the people around me. And so it's vital to me to be as strong as I can be. It's vital to me to be as empathetic as I can be. It's vital to me to grow in this way and to become solvent so that I can be those things that I was in a better way. It won't be what it was.
Nope.
That's the other thing. You don't heal into what you were. You heal into where you're going. And
My mom was in town recently, man, and we,
yeah.
caught up and got the podcast, and she's recently been
Oh, you did one with her.
diagnosed. Yeah, oh yeah, she's recently been diagnosed with on early onset Parkinson's,
Yeah.
and so kind of learning about that, and realizing, that there's some case of, that developing into dementia or things later down the road. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately and how fucking scary that is. I know the journey that I took through my injury, which took a lot of my physical ability, fucked me up a lot because I never realized how much I count on it and how much I completely took it for granted that this machine did the things I asked of it. And so, man, reflecting on the idea of, the head injury or something going on neurologically where I start to fade and lose memories and
Yeah.
like the ability to think through problems. Fuck, man, that's so scary. That's such a tremendous fear to me. Now that you've kind of cleared some of the clouds away, I mean, is
Yeah.
it a gratitude for
Oh
having
fuck!
it?
I'm so glad I got hurt. I mean, it's like, because I come from a ton of concussions, and so, like I said, when you're like that, it jars the filter through which you see life. So you don't know you're looking at life through a filter. It's how life occurs to you, but it's different than how it occurs to you. You know what I mean? There's that
Oh,
kind of
for
thing that
sure.
happens,
Yeah,
and so
your
it happens
perspective is
slowly,
different than actual reality.
right? And you're maybe more paranoid, irritable. All that shit starts to increase. You know, and all the ensuing problems that happen with relationships and with all that. And my mom said it in a way. I was a day from going to the brain treatment center in Newport Beach, and it was a dark place. My mom came over and wanted to say goodbye to me and say I'm glad you're going. And she says, I'm so glad that you got hurt. And I've been sobbing on the couch for 2 years or so. It just been. I was like, you got to tell me more
Yeah,
about that.
man.
Um, and she says, because I saw this darkness coming over you for the last decade, and it was just slow and but present. And I just thought you would never look into it, and now you are, and I'm so great, and I'm so grateful.
Wow.
I'm so grateful because that thing opened my eyes to things that it was just a blind side to me. I didn't have any idea because all I knew was like fuck, life's tough, whatever, who cares? Nobody's complaining. We're just going through. Let's go. And so I never took care of that stuff, and there wasn't a conversation about how to take care of concussions and head injuries. There's a very like Rogan. I remember we watched a guy get starched, man. This guy Sam Morgan, really tough guy out of Minnesota, but he'd had too many head injuries, and so he got put out, and he was out for I don't know 6 minutes in front of me, and to watch a man bleed through his nose, mouth, and ears for like it's a horrific thing to behold, right? It's not great, and we talked about it a lot later. And Joe says, the sad thing about concussions is that they don't show up for like 10, 20 years later. And then after this happened for me, I remembered that. And I thought, how in the fuck did he know that then? You know what I mean? And it's like, but he's just as observational student of life, and he's
Right.
known a lot of guys, and it absolutely rings true in my case, But the understanding that I got, and that the hope and the knowledge that there's growth, and that there's recovery, and that there's that it's worth it. And also Jesus Christ, man, it's just the energy to want to
Right.
want to try, just to want to be in the world. Like, and I don't know what that shifted, but it's like I, I just started doing little stuff, force myself to go on a walk every morning, get in that morning light with the good blue rays come in, get in the ice every day, start to do motions to change your thinking, because your thinking's in a broken cyclical cycle right now. And until I started doing those hard things, it's like you can't get past it because you can't outthink it with the thing that's broken. I mean, you have to physically move into another thing, put another feeling with the thoughts that are going on, and start to change your thoughts, which will change your emotions, which is all precipitated by doing action in the positive direction. And so, thank God I want to be in action. I guess that's my point. Because
Yeah,
there's a
no,
point where you
man,
just don't.
that's for me, that's kind of everything, right? Like, I really believe like there's a moment in your life which I consider to be like your base self, right? Which is until the moment you've got awareness that you want some things to change, it's made you who you are. And that is
Yeah.
some combination of every action you've taken, whether it was a choice or not a choice, or you believe it was a choice or not a
Or an
choice,
environment or anything.
the
Yeah.
environment you grew up in, what your exposure to everything was, from relationships to money to intimacy to whatever, all of it created who you are at that moment.
Yeah.
Whether you loved it and leaned into it or rejected it and didn't want it, it came from this experience that you were put in line with.
Yeah.
But it's some moment to decide, like, I want to be this way. Like, I want to be more empathetic. I want to be living with gratitude. I want to be strong. I want to be healthy. Like, that's when the actions have to start adding up to point you in that direction. But
Mhm.
without knowing this direction or awareness of like, holy shit, that way I always feel cynical about blah, blah, blah. I don't have to do that. I can
Right.
change it by having more gratitude and being more focused, but it is the actions that are going to get you there.
Yeah, and it's the and like you said, the where you're at, how you're thinking about it. You know, to be in appreciation, to live in appreciation of the moments that I'm in. Wouldn't rather be anywhere than right here. And the other thing about like every footstep took me to where I am. Can't be sour about anybody.
Nope.
I'm the one that brought me here. You know what I mean? And it's like that kind of accountability too is like that's a place where we can live and grow because nobody's looking to because it's not functional not to, right? And so until you kind of get your crew together, like everybody knows that, then everybody's accountable and growing in a hypertrophic way. I think also because you're not hiding behind the fantasy of who. Well, what I meant was this, or that.
Right.
No, man, we have to go through with what it is. This is what it is, and once we accept that, it's a lot easier. It's clearer. You know, all the muddy part is the part when people are like, I don't want to say this because it might hurt their feelings, or I don't want to do this. You know, and it's like to that live authentically. It's not as
Well, it's some
simple as it
filter of
seems.
expectation that you're putting in front
It
of
is
it when,
actually,
when I'm surrounded by people I love and people that I know that I communicate with you, that I know that like we can have honest talks. My intention of nothing I'd ever say would be
right,
to attack you.
right,
And so if I accidentally phrased something wrong or it came across in a weird way or it hit one of your triggers that it got jack shit to do with me, my intention wasn't an attack,
right,
right? Like we know that because of our relationship and how
right,
we communicate. Now, other people that go that other route, right? Like people I recognized in my life that I did see this intention of an attack or like trying to say a thing to kind of get in the way or slow you down
yep.
for their own insecurities. Like, now I got your fucking number
Ain't it
too.
wild that that's a thing too. It's like I was thinking when you were saying that in jujitsu, you can feel it. You can feel a guy that wants to hurt you, right? Because guys
Hmm.
are rolling, they're rolling hard and all that. They're trying to win, whatever, but there's not maliciousness there mostly, right? You're growing together and all that. And then but you can feel those other guys and you're like, oh, okay, I see this. I know
I
what
see
this
the
is.
game. Yeah, I
Yeah.
see what you're trying to
We're
prove.
going knee to neck.
Right. Right. Yeah. And, having the confidence to realize that, like, nah, man, I don't fuck with that type of energy anymore.
Right. Yeah.
That the only energy I want around me are people that I trust, people I
Right.
love, people that want and expect the most out of themselves that I do.
Well, and that if I misspeak when I'm talking about something sensitive that I have somebody to work it out with that I trust. That's not looking to go where I'm wrong, but go, oh, well, maybe look at it like this, and just offer me another perspective that's reasonable. Like, because there's a ton of them. This idea that somebody has to be wrong in the conversation is insane. When we
Well,
all come
right,
from
right
like
and wrong have
all our
gotten
unique
really muddy
backgrounds
for
and
me.
perspectives, it's like maybe nobody's wrong. How about that?
Yeah, I think right and wrong are really strange and built
Yep.
on a lot of
Good and
climate and
bad, right and
environment
wrong,
and
all that
anything,
stuff
right?
is
There's,
not. Yeah.
it can either I believe that there are actions that you can take, and the consequences are either favorable or unfavorable based on the direction you'd like to go.
Yep.
And the other simple rule I live by is whatever I can pursue whatever the fuck I want to in this life, as long as it is never made more important than someone else's pursuit of their thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, don't transgress your own values and don't step on anybody else's.
No
Let's go.
fucking way, man.
You know?
No fucking way. That's treating the rest of the world the same way I want to be treated.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, and that's like, remember dudes, oh, how's life treating you? And I'm like, exactly how I treat it. It's a bounce back mirror, man. And you can't lose. And I learned that by watching guys that were big, like coaches and that were gracious regardless. The dude's a prick, walks in the door, he's a disrespect. Oh, well, thanks a lot for coming. Good to see you. Appreciate all the information you brought or what. And always gracious. And I thought, man, that never loses, man.
It never loses,
And
dude.
my
That
ego
kill 'em
gets in
with
the way and goes,
kindness thing.
no, I need this guy to know that he's a scumbag. And it's like, what? Why do you need that? What? We're not out here training the world, Tate. You're training the world how to treat you. So maybe have a little graciousness, allowance, and go forward like that.
Also, what a fucking waste of energy, right?
Totally. What
What
am
a
I
what a
thinking
waste
about?
of energy
I'm thinking
focusing
about
it
this
on
guy
a thing like that when you can use it toward your thing. Why don't you go read 5 pages in a book that would be good for you instead
or
of
their thing. Even
right.
better. It's like, you know what I mean? It's because that's where it's at, right? Is in that communion of work together. You don't bind with anybody like that. Those are the best relationships where we did this hard thing together and we got past it. And I mean, that's why hard conversations are important. If you have somebody you can have a hard conversation with, man, keep that motherfucker close. Because
Dude,
those are the things where you butt up against each other so much, but you know you love each other, so you don't walk away and say "fuck you," which you would do to almost anybody else. I mean, it's like those people are critical in our lives.
man, you know, I like to use moments of like the hardest experience, right, to kind of set a tone of like anything less than that, that means we're fucking good to go. And like, hard conversations, for me, nothing was probably worse than the actual divorce conversation, right? Like
Yep.
than having that one. And so like to honor that as being as impactful if it was on my life and not something to be taken lightly. Um, Now any conversation that ever comes up, like no fucking way I back away from. Like if I can have that really hard conversation and my life's okay and I've survived and I've
Right.
managed an okay
With somebody that
relationship with
matters to you a
love
lot.
with someone I still love very much,
Yeah.
like then well, I can't talk to you about some other thing.
Right.
So it's either
About
that,
how you're
have
not
the
doing your
fucking
work.
conversation while the eggs are still fucking still on the plate and running,
Right. Totally.
or fucking
Totally.
don't care.
I love that so much because I got to clean it up right away, man. If I have a grift with somebody, it's like I don't want to go to bed with that, man. I don't want them to go to bed with that. I want to have clear communication, and I want that, and that's the
Are you
hugest part.
familiar with like the way animals like shake off trauma?
Yeah.
So like apparently the only two species that don't do some sense of that is us and domesticated dogs.
You know what though? I wonder if that's what those neurogenic tremors were.
Ah, like a seizure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, yeah, because I would just shake. It would come over me and last 30 seconds, go away.
Fascinating. I like the idea of it.
And then deep guttural breathing. Like, and somebody said and that just was like a natural thing. And somebody said that's your, uh, stimulating your vagus nerve.
Yeah,
That's what,
vagus nerve, right.
and I was like that. So just things, I mean, what's wild to me, if that shit's true, what the body does naturally, my friend Pat says, Tate, don't worry. The body has a tendency to heal. And it's like stuff like that where I go, that's my experience. I mean, I don't know what science is, but that's my
Well,
experience.
especially look, it's not going to do it in a shitty environment, right? Like you wouldn't have been able to stay in an environment that would have been really unhealthy for you. Say also be eating trash and
Yeah,
not fueling your body and doing those type of things and expect it to heal, right? Like it can
that's
try, but if
100%.
you got to give it the gas,
Yeah.
man,
And then paying attention to, all of our friends, I mean, people that are living as we are is going, I knew that all I can do, I can't make you happy. I can't make you come. All I can do is make a nice garden that makes it safe and comfortable. So it is
Mhm.
inviting, and do that for your health, do that for your wealth, whatever it is, you can create that space for. And I think that's what it is more than pushing into stuff. It's like create this space where that growth can happen and let it unfold. Do the good work in front of you and let it unfold, and that stuff comes to pass. Being in the conversation is worth more than luck in a lot of ways. Just by consistently being in the conversation.
Yeah, for damn sure, it's worth a lot more than luck. I mean,
And you
and
can
I think
control
I
it,
really
right?
believe that luck deal, right? Like that's when hard
Yeah,
work and preparation meet. I mean, opportunity and being ready for it. I mean, the same reason you take all the fucking beatings on the way there is to build the confidence and realizing they don't kill you.
right.
And so whenever the big opportunity comes up, you're willing to take the shot at it
Yeah,
because yeah, you've been beaten before,
yeah.
like, and you've also
What's
won
the worst that's
before.
going to happen?
Right. Like I haven't died yet, man. That's
Yeah,
it. Right. Like I'm not fucking dead yet. Let's go.
yeah.
Let's push that limit and get uncomfortable and see what we're made of.
That
And
attitude is priceless.
dude, those moments in life have always been my favorite.
Yeah,
Those moments of complete presence and focused.
yeah,
Now's the fucking time,
yeah.
man.
Training with the team to fight is so great like that.
Ah,
Stick fights are the first time I really got that feeling. I was like, oh my God. And then stick fights are the first time I got an appreciation for an opponent in violence. And because it's like another entity comes when two people go under those consequences and drive hard with their wills at each other. There's something else that happens there's another conversation happening that can only be created by you guys being there like that together. And in that, there's a huge gratitude for that guy. Yeah, it's a
Man,
trip.
I'm
Like
so
like
bummed.
a God
Like
entity or something. It was the
you
first
know,
time I felt flow state, but I didn't have any words for it. I didn't know what it was. I just chased it for 15 years till I finally read Rise of Superman got written. You know what I mean? I had no, and then that verbiage, I was like, holy shit, I know that's exactly that. I get that, and you live
yeah,
at
that's
it.
the good stuff, right? Like
And
that's
then,
the first stuff I recognize just through sports in general.
yeah,
Like throwing or lifting, where I would find that flow state. That man, the scatteredness of my normal attention shifted.
yep. You get
And it
present
just
and
oh,
focus.
man, it's the fucking best, and so, like, I had to take awareness of, anytime I've ever had something that locks me in that good,
Yep.
I succeed at it, as long as I'll continue
To
to
hold
dive
the
in and
space
not
to keep
care.
the focus is the thing, right? That becomes the whole job. It just, yeah. That focus thing. I remember watching Nick Diaz and Carlos Condit fight, and Nick Diaz is he beat you up for over the whole run, and he'll force you to fight right in front of him and all that. And Carlos is an aggressive finisher. Up until then, that's all. It was just go. It was a buzz saw, and that's what the fight that Nick wanted, and it's not the fight that Carlos gave him. So for 5 rounds, he kept the pristine focus of bop 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 and then move. I'm not going to be inside of this with him. And to see that under those, I mean, that's it just, I appreciate the hell out of it because that grows the vessel, right? You go under pressure
Mhm.
like that with focus, like you're talking about, like that, it grows the vessel's capacity for that kind of work, which I think is huge and beneficial to everybody around you.
Well, but why wouldn't that capacity grow if you don't test it?
Right. Yeah. No reason under no
In the
stress.
same way I kind of, I it clicked for me really recently, right? That, the adaptation I want to create with my body works the way it does, right? That I have to create some amount of stress and then my body has to rebuild itself and repair and recover so that we're better to handle the same amount of stress again because now we deal with that level of stress. We've taught it that,
Yeah.
and so the same way muscle builds or anything else, why why wouldn't my capacity for empathy or my capacity for focus or any of these other type of things need to be stretched and tested as
Whoa.
well?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think about that stuff with repetitions, right? It's like there's so many things that I put reps in that like drinking, instantly pleasurable, has an answer for every emotion I'm experiencing, all the things or whatever, right? It's like there's that kind of a thing that goes on with energies like that. But the focus to get out of that and to be able to put your whole self without any hangups of like, oh, I'd rather be here or there. It's like the presence of it, I guess, is the real gift of it. The presence of being right in the spot where I'm at.
Yeah. No, man, that's the best feeling ever. Man, I know that you're what? You've recently crossed over 50?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what round of career for Tate Fletcher is this? Like how many times before did you feel that like, so this is what we're doing?
Oh fuck. Well, you know what it is too is like I thought it was short. I thought I'd be dead, at 28 or 30 or something like that. I didn't think I was going to make it very long. And so you don't plan very long when you think like that. And then by the time I go, oh, fuck, you might stay alive. You better take better care of yourself. It's like you get into a different relationship with life. And so, yeah, how many different things, I had the idea when I was a kid that you're supposed to pick a thing, be a lawyer, be a
Yeah.
phlebotomist, be a what, and go with that thing. And none of those things seem really fun to me. I was like, that doesn't seem, putting being an anesthesiologist. That's great, but it's like I don't. That's not like riding a motorbike.
Yeah,
It's
but we're
you know what I
also
mean?
only sold on the idea of it being great is that it pays a lot.
Right, totally.
That's it.
And then I mean, I'm over and I'm talking to God and listening, and I'm driving a truck up in northern Michigan through this forest and going, universe, what is this? Like, what am I to do? I'm here, I'm sober, I got no job skills, I don't know where I'm going, I'm directionless, and all that came to me was be happy. You can be useful if you're happy, if you're enjoying this. Find where your enjoyment is in it. And I never found a better answer than that. And inside of that, it's like I'm able to develop mastery over things because I get interested in the thing, I dig into it, and if I pay attention to it and I don't leave when I plateau supposedly or something like that, man, I get a lot of benefit from that. It's like a dude told me in meditation early on. He goes, I go, which is the best meditation, walking or transcendental and he goes, it's like you're in the desert and you're dying of thirst. And there's one hole that says transcendental. There's one that says, and you dig a little. And then you get a little bored, and then you go, oh, I'll see what the other one's like, and you dig a little. You never get to water. You dig into any one of those, you're going to find the aquifer, and then you're going to have an understanding of all those things in a different way.
Mhm.
And I think that's what, I think also people that never really dig in, they don't understand what a plateau is,
No.
where you have the illusion that you're not growing and all that stuff, and which is an illusion also, right? And it's just staying in the conversation when you're bored, when it doesn't feel. And so I did that, and then that thing, I thought, oh God, is this the thing I'm going to do forever? And then it's like when my first real change happened, it's like, no, it's just the thing that built you up to where you are to the next thing. And then, and so on. And so then those things all dovetailed. It was all physicality. It was a lot of combat. And then it went into combat in films. And that, and inside of that, it's like, well, let's start Caveman Coffee and let's go ahead and start this gym because there's not a gym here that's like this. And everybody I'd ever heard my whole life complained about what they didn't have.
Yeah.
It wasn't there. If I'd have had this when I was a kid, and so I'm not that dude. I'm going to make this. And
Yep.
so then I started doing stuff like that, and that started to be my interest of how to. And that gym still runs today, thank God. And I got a couple black belts that got different schools around now, and there's that kind of thing that it's like those are benefits to me knowing those people and having built relationships with those guys that are I couldn't have conspired to have that. That happened because I followed what I loved. They loved that. They came. We fell in love with each other over the course of this thing that bound us. And that thing is transferable. If you get a discipline like that for one thing where you get into mastery of it, that's transferable to other things in your life,
Right.
And then it's like, okay, well, how could I have deeper relationships with better intimacy? What would that look like? Maybe, I mean, how could I dance tango? Well, I mean, whatever the thing is, it's like that thing grows the vessel into the next thing. And so it's kind of been like I've taken that attitude instead of thinking like I've taken a loss for having to put fighting behind or whatever it is like that. It's just like this with stunt work. I came into the film business basically as a stunt guy, and then I would get roles because of my ability or how I looked or what and all that. And then I just worked at acting, and then I've had this great run on Mando, and then it's also what you say no to is important. And so it's like, do I want to say yes to the next thing where I fight whoever? It's like maybe not, but there's options to grow into what's next if I leave some space for it. If I fill it up with stuff that I'm not like, I'm not really into that role, but I take that because that's a bad move for me because it takes up the space where the other thing could be. If I say
Right.
yes, I'll double this other guy on this movie that is like whatever. It's a robbery of myself in a way because that's not where I want to be. And if I'm saying yes to that, the universe gives me that instead of going, oh, he's not that guy anymore. Let's give him the next thing where he can be useful. It's like that other thing that the universe is conspiring to help me instead of hamstring me. And that's
Yeah.
a
It
real
tends to give you what you're asking for, whether or not you realize that's the order you're placing, right?
totally, bro. Well, and also if I think of the order is if I'm super egocentric or I have a real problem that I need X, Y, or Z to happen, I'm going, fuck God, what is it? X, Y, or Z? We've got this relationship, we're talking, and okay, and then one of them happens. Y. Great, we got Y. And in that, I've robbed myself of the infinite possibilities of what the universe could offer me as a solution that's way better than X, Y, or Z. But I'm robbed of it because I think that I know with my finite mind instead of knowing what I really know with my footsteps, which is you do the good work in the space that you want, great things unfold. Way better than you could have conspired to have.
Yeah, I've recently dove into. We just had a trip, got back from South Africa, and I dove into this book, uh, "A Lion Tracker's Guide to Life."
I know it.
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great,
Was it
great,
Bodie?
great story. Yep.
Yeah.
And so he's talking about that thing, right? That so often you get caught on, seeing the first step and seeing a paw print and deciding like now I'm tracking a lion, when in fact you just need to focus on the next step.
Mm,
Get there and keep that in sight, accomplish it, and then figure out where the next track is. Instead of tracking a lion, track each step, and eventually you find a lion anyway.
yeah. Yeah.
And so, man, I love, that
That's like
process and
that
that hunt.
not looking at the outcome kind of thing.
Right, right. That I've removed the expectation that I'm going to find a lion and I'm more interested in learning about what I can from each step.
Mm. And then watching your back so the lion doesn't get you.
Right, right, right. Yeah. Tracking a lion is a whole fucking another ball game, man.
Yeah.
Dude, with the the traumatic brain injury, I know that you really kind of dove into opening the doors to anything that could possibly be helpful.
Yeah.
For anyone out there suffering from that, I know that I've got a bunch of first responders and those type of guys who get banged on and then, never are able to switch out of fight or flight. I mean, what do you recommend?
Yeah. A lot of that's lifestyle too, right? We get trained into that. Like when it's time for the job to happen, it's that you're at, DEFCON 5. And to live there is tough, especially if you don't know how to get into that secondary system of relaxation. And so being traumatized or triggered in your head, like that happens naturally in that regard too, not just train, but it can happen from impact, from explosions, from a lot of things. Even people with poor diets, they can see brain damage from. It's insane. And so what I can say is that there's not real help in the regular Western medicine fields. That when I went to those doctors, they said take fish oil, and if you don't feel better inside of 8 months, come back and we'll give you some Alzheimer's medicine. And I go, you're telling me to kill myself? I go, are you? And Lacey was with me. She was a real advocate for me and took care of me in that time in a huge way. And she says, are you not interested in NAD and hyperbaric chambers and blue light? Like, are you like? There's other things. And she says, that's not what we do. She says, stem cells. That's not what we do. And so there's this thing about this is what the FDA allows, and this is what you can get. And so I just started looking at friends of mine that had tried to heal themselves in different ways. A couple of my buddies started a hospital down in Mexico called CHIPSA. One reason was because one of their moms got sick with cancer, and it was the old Gerson Hospital for Cancer. And so they do a lot of stuff with Coley's toxins and different things that you can't do in the United States. And if your treatments aren't working in Western medicine, that a lot of people go there, and a lot of people find great relief from that. And then they started working with guys that were MMA athletes, and because of their associations with me and everything else, and they've got a great hyperbaric chamber, they started coursing things towards that way too, and they have a great stem cell program. And so I started looking at that stuff. Now that stuff's expensive. I went to brain clinics; those can be expensive. What I can do for free if I'm just a dude that's out there, and I gotta say, it's not without some guilt that like when I was hurt and I could go to a center, I knew what being hurt was like, and I knew what being broke was like. And I wasn't broke at that time. I had the luxury of being able to get some help to pay for it. And it feels real horrible to know that there's guys that feel like that. There's not help for.
Now it's a fucking bummer that again, right? The vote that we've cast for this system is capitalism all the way through,
Yeah.
and it's
So
a real fucking shame.
what I can do that doesn't cost me a thing and that's low impact, light hurt me. I couldn't go outside for a while. But like after like 8 months, I could go outside and I could go for walks. Sometimes I didn't have energy to go very far. I'd go to the end of the driveway, just go outside. I just had to break the seal of the goddamn door. And that was sometimes enough. And then sometimes I'd turn around and go back to bed. So I'd allow myself to do it. And I gave time because I couldn't do anything else. So I'd get in the blue light. They say the blue light waves help in the morning between 8 and 11, that they're the strongest for re-nourishing the brain. They say the times you should be asleep are between 10 and 2 in the morning are the most vital times to be asleep. That's when the most reconstruction happens on the brain, and try to get regular sleep. So I'd start going to bed at like 9 or something. I'm up at 5, whatever. And so I'd start, turning my life into that. I was already really adept at keto, paleo, and they said for sure, like Dr. Kirk Parsley was like 100%, you're going to be on paleo. We want to access ketones as quickly as possible for the best energy for the brain. And the sugars aren't going to help you. Like, let's get clean. And so I kept that for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years or something like that. I do ice multiple times a week because it recenters my brain. I wake up with my head, wah, and even still sometimes if I get too tired or something, these like manifestations of what early brain trauma was like come back to me, and so I got to watch
So
my
just
mind.
like almost audible noise, like just
Yeah. It's yeah. And so I have to sit there and breathe and say, you're okay. You're not, this will pass. Like, because it seems like it's a forever thing. And then I'd go, okay, I'd wait like 20 minutes and try to focus. Okay, just focus on in and out breathe. I'd have to reduce my thinking to stuff like that, or I'd go into all these little, and so then when it was so easy, especially the wintertime comes and I could just break the ice out in that trough and jump in it. And it's like, we're just thinking of this and let's do, and that would, help me get through the next moments. And, it's a
Some
lot of,
more things that bring you back to that complete present
and
moment.
hyperbarics. Hyperbarics, I think, helped me so much. All I could do was
So,
lay there.
there's a lot there, right? Because I recently was talking with Wellborn. I need to
Okay.
have him back on the podcast, but John with Power Athlete was saying he'd gone to this thing and was talking to people at this brain clinic. And ends up having a conversation with a guy saying that so they did a brain scan on him at this thing. And years ago, he was like, I had one of these done, blah, 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 back when I was playing football. And they're like, really? Where? And so he gives them information. It ends up being some of the same people running the study. So they were able to track down John's old data
Dude, that's huge.
and to see it. And so John, and of course, Wellborn being a goddamn superhero, he's showing signs of anti-aging on his brain, that neuroplasticity is really coming back, and that he has fixed a lot of things, that trauma that comes from playing in the NFL that way.
Yeah.
And whether that, and John thinks a lot of that's doing with, staying away from that kind of crystallization that happens in people where they, don't listen to music, they don't read new movies, they fucking live on autopilot every fucking
Don't play
day.
chess. Don't. I found that even just starting to hit mitts again, man. It's like just and putting together different combos with a different coach, and it's just like I got to pay attention. And I'm like, oh, this is
Yeah, new puzzle to
good
solve.
for me. God, yeah. And John
And we
said there was
forget how
another thing
much
he
that our
did.
brain needs that quick challenge and
Yeah,
thing to do. Otherwise, it'll find something to do or turn off.
yeah,
Because why would it fucking give you everything that it needs if you don't do shit?
yeah. Why are you good at problem solving if you never face any problems? You're not.
Right. I mean, I would love to see, like, what's the brain study of someone who retires from flying fighter jets? If, they haven't taken any head trauma, I bet your brain is so thinking so hard doing those type of
All the
things,
time.
or like driving
Like
NASCAR, right? That
900
like,
miles an hour.
fuck, I bet your
Yeah,
CNS is so shot after doing something
yeah.
like that.
Well, and regular life slows down to the point where it's like easily, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And that's one of those things that I, with the group of guys I work with, and women I work with who, deal with the same lunacy I do from ADHD.
yeah.
One of the things I've liked about exposing them to boxing or jujitsu or any of these other type of things is like, don't tell me you can't focus, because I got you to focus.
Right. Yeah.
Because if we're standing in front of each other throwing punches, you're not thinking about groceries.
Right. Yeah. You gotta
And
you
so,
gotta
like,
find
I
yeah,
just have to prove to you
yep,
that you can focus.
yep,
So now that means we have to figure out how to use it.
yep. And
But
how
until
to
then, and we identify as this problem we have, it becomes something we can't change, right? Like, this, so another part of being in Africa, one of these things that we had seen was, with elephants, when they're really young, they'll tie a rope around their foot and, put a
stay
spike
from
in the ground,
yeah,
and the elephant will stay kind of in that area. And as they get older, you don't have to change the size of the spike in the ground, because they don't believe they can
yeah,
go anywhere.
yeah.
Right. And it's a real fucking bummer. But how many times do we do that to ourselves and we don't ever push again because,
All
well, this
day.
was hard when I was 10. I can't
Yeah.
figure it out. But like
Well,
remembering
and
how much you sucked at stuff as a kid too, and being able to suck at it again as an adult to get better helps.
well, it's like you're either curious or you're scared. And if you're curious as a kid, you're going, how do I learn that thing? And if you're
Right.
scared, you're going, how do I pretend I know that, but I don't do the work because I don't really believe I have a process by which I could learn that. And so that, and those things get sticky. There's, I think Logan Gelbrick's book is really great. He's got a book called Going Right. And it talks about that. Making your highest choice for yourself is maybe the scariest thing, but it's the very best thing to do. And there is no alternative. And he was written a whole book about it, which is beautiful. But
Going right.
yeah, Going Right.
Yeah. I'll
Yeah,
definitely
is
dive into that,
my
man.
buddy that owns Deuce Gym. Logan, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Oh, that's great.
and then on the TBI tip too. I don't know if anybody's in Austin, but this weekend they're doing a ruck, and so
Hmm.
50 for the Fallen is a group that a guy Chad Connolly, an old operator,
Hmm.
started, and to get veterans the help they need for TBI, so their families or themselves. If that's what all the fundraising is for that. And so 50 for the Fallen is a real cool organization I've been talking to for a while, and I'm hoping to go. I've never done a ruck, but I'm gonna start training that way. Because the other thing too about this, fuck not moving. Ruben's like, dude, you move Chris. You got Chris Payne. All this. He's a real complimentary, nice guy, whatever. But I was like, I just want to get to the place where I'm not scared to get tired.
Right.
When you think you're suffocating, like there's no more air. Like I just want to get to the place where I'm super happy to be tired, that I just got a gas tank on me, and that's coming little by little, you know. And
Dude, that was, a few years ago, I decided to, post after getting the knee fixed, I went into doing some endurance training and decided to do this
yeah, I
run
saw
in
you.
Bryce Canyon, right?
Yep.
And at the end of it, I didn't really realize that's what I'd gotten from it, but I'd realized I was like okay to take physical damage again.
Yeah,
And I'd
yeah,
been so scared of it for so long with
yeah,
my knee and hip and just being punished for, over 200 yards a day of walking. And then I'm really fucked for 3 or 4 days that just the juice was never worth the squeeze. And it
yeah,
was again that I could feel like soreness the way you're supposed to and
yeah. Where it's not
tired the way you're
pain, but
supposed
it's
to.
usually,
Right, right.
yeah.
And not debilitating pain that makes me in a
Yeah,
worse
man.
place.
Yeah, and then the talk happens, and it's like there's nothing like feeling strong, right? And you can't just feel strong without being strong. You got to be in the effort of getting strong, you know. And it could be at any point, but to be in the effort of that, man, there's nothing better. There's not, and there's nothing more fortifying. Like fuck, what else am I gonna do? You know what I mean? It's like I'm not gonna. Is it gonna be better later if I'm weaker? Like that seems like a empty argument. You know, you can, let's
No,
go.
right. It never works that
Yeah.
way.
Even when I hit my head, the doctor goes, "God damn, you're lucky you're as fucking as dense as you were because fuck." And after that, and I had a friend that got T-boned by a motorcycle, he was the motorcycle rather into an
Mm.
SUV, and and fuck, he should have died. But the doctor told him the same thing, and I thought, man, be as fucking strong as you can. God damn it.
When would that ever be a hindrance?
I know. I know.
I mean, look, I think there's at some point, right, that like perhaps I don't need to be like Hapthor
Sure.
to be the world's most resilient.
Yeah.
There's a point where I
Yeah.
just don't fit anywhere anymore.
Yeah. Go Robert Oberst. You can do those big heavy overhead lifts. I'm good.
Yeah, right, right, right. Yeah, but man, being resilient,
Yeah.
like that's a big one. Like knowing that you can take some damage and
And
knowing
knowing
that,
that you don't go into your next thing with trepidation. You
right.
can go in fully to fucking life. I mean, that's the thing. Without it, you can't because you've got those questions. And you're like, and so now it's just like I'm back to like feeling like, let it kill me. Let's fucking go. Let's go. Because you're already dead. So, you know what I mean? It's like, it's already a wrap, guys. Like, let's have some fun. Right? Let's make a memory.
Dude,
Yeah.
that's how I feel about everything, right? Is recently thinking about always being able to shift to the next thing, right? That like we're still in it. We're still got this fight in us. We still can learn more new things. We can still try new stuff and fuck stuff up and fail because whoever's giving a shit, right?
Right.
Like that's the way it goes. And removing that fear of failure
And it
allows
shows
you so much opportunity to just try and learn.
and it allows other people to go, that bad motherfucker did that. He just he threw it all in the wind and showed his ass like that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Matt Vincent did that. And then they're like, fuck, maybe I could do that. So that's cool. Oh, okay. You know what I mean? And it's like you can move that. You never know what you're moving away out of the way for other people to get past themselves. It's fucking cool. When you do that publicly the way you do, it has such an impact that echoes downstream for folks.
Man,
It's important.
getting to see people switch on to it is one of my favorite things
Yeah, what's better
is
than coaching?
realizing, right, that they can do things that their account, like it's on them. And the reason it hasn't worked out yet is because it hasn't been given that level of attention.
Yeah,
That it took me 20 years to get great at throwing before it fell into the right
right,
slot.
right.
And so why would anything else take
Be
me
shorter.
something faster?
Yeah. But that's
You
the
know,
thing. I get older. There's not as much plasticity or whatever, and you get into these rote patterns, and so you're like, I don't know if I'll, do it because it's uncomfortable to break into that. Wait, I was supposed to have mastered this or what, all the stuff, and it's like, nah, stay curious, just stay curious.
stay curious, right? Because man, there's that other side of the thing that is where I understand that I'm supposed to explore and figure it out on my own at this point in my life, but I think there was a point in my life where I thought I was supposed to know already.
Sure,
And
sure,
I was bummed on me for not being good at a thing I'd never tried before.
right, yeah,
And like being able to remove that and be like, yo, it's your first attempt. Of course you're going to suck at it.
yeah,
Like go suck at it. Go be a kook because you're only allowed to be a kook for so long.
right. You can't be a
Showing up and
dreamer.
being an honest kook is great. Showing up and pretending you have your shit together and knowing when you when you don't
Yeah,
is a way worse look.
you can be a disciplined kook, and that's way ahead of everything else, right? It's like that's on the way to greatness.
Well, because I also believe that some level of greatness, right? Like all of those people, maybe not a few. Like Michael Jordan probably doesn't have
Sure,
like, well,
sure.
the guy above me, like, man, you may be it.
Right.
like,
Yeah,
but other than that, like, there's always someone that you're like, fuck, you should have seen this guy.
totally. Yeah, it's interesting how special we like athletes are and what they show us. It's fucking how special to be able to view, everybody's life in that way and go, fuck, maybe me too, or whatever. It's like there's freedom in all that.
Well, what you said about being strong, right? Like, that's one of those things I've always loved about it and been attracted to athletes in general is, there's no way to fake it. Like,
Right.
you didn't fucking inherit strong from mommy and daddy.
Yeah.
Like, you showed up in the gym and died for this shit for no good reason for a really long
That
time.
250-pound rock is either on your shoulder or it
That's
is not.
it.
It's not.
It didn't accidentally become a thing that you're
Yep.
able to do. You're very curious and obsessed with something that really doesn't hold a ton of value other
That
than
wild.
being stronger.
Dude, that's one of the things that I fought against so long. When you're bringing me back 20 years, probably, but like that idea of doing a worthless, what's seen as a worthless, like MMA, seen as a worthless endeavor. Why would you spend time being obsessed about lifting weights? Seen as a worthless endeavor, and now we're in the language of like, no, it's mental health building. It's like, it's these holistic aspects that we know it to be. But back then, dude, you just had to be like, I guess I got separations from people around me because they don't get it. They don't get how nurturing this is in a whole different way. They don't understand what Henry Rollins means about being an advocate for the steel, that it changes his life and focuses his discipline. They don't get it. And then and at that time, I go, oh, there's people that get it and people that don't get it. I used to think everybody's like, oh, we all got the same shit and we all kind of want the best. No, man, it's everybody's making
Well,
different
I
choices
think on
all
the
the time.
mental health front, right? And like the same with lifting is I never got to fight or do the combat sports. I think I would have really enjoyed it, but at this point with a shit leg and hip, I'll be very careful
There's
about
not.
what I learn.
I'll do all your street fighting for you.
No problem. Perfect. It is this resistance is critical. Man,
Cool.
to like whether that's from the strength training and having something hard to push against to find your edges.
Yeah.
Like I want to fucking know all my edges.
Yeah.
And the only way to find those is actually going out and doing it instead of having some made up expectation of like, well, I could probably do this. Like, fuck that
Yeah.
bravado, man. That shit gets you in trouble.
Yeah.
Like,
People
I
that,
want to
that
know
move.
who I am.
Why would you think that? Why would you think untested that you could do that?
No
That's
fucking
so
way.
you're looking at dangers. You're like, whoa. But some people have never tried. And people that are excellent make shit look easy. So they go, I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, mm,
Dude, I host this men's retreat weekend. And so I've got a boxing coach that comes in and a
so,
jujitsu coach that comes in, and it's such a beginner rolling class. And like it is teaching people to throw a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
sure.
6,
Yeah.
like and actually learn how to throw a fucking mechanical punch and not like a cardio boxing
Yeah.
class.
Yeah. Put your
And
feet in the
what I
right
love
place and
about it
land in the right
is,
place and all that.
and like most of the dudes who are coming, right? These are physical dudes who've trained and been part of stuff, but you realize no one can fucking throw a punch.
Right.
And everyone kind of thinks they can.
Dude, did you ever see at the CrossFit games when they had a softball throw? That
No.
dude, hilarious. All these muscle bound dudes. And I mean, crazy throw, like 10, 12 feet out, some of them, like wild, just excellent athletes. But this never did this before. Like, wild.
Dude, so every year competing, right? Like, so we had this one contest at one Highland Games in Enumclaw, Washington, was like North American Championships. And so every year I was there, we hosted like a halftime. And so just for shits and grins, we came up with another event. And then it was like a $5 buy-in from all the pros. And then the winner bought drinks for everybody at the end of the
Right?
day. So whatever that equals,
Yeah,
right?
all fun.
And so like one year we did a wiffle ball home run derby
Sick.
off of a tee with your left hand, like doing it opposite handed. Oh man, watch people just can't do shit.
Yeah, not even touch the ball.
Take professional athletes who are so moving fluid and
So
like throw
good.
some new wrench in the works and just
Yep.
can't do shit.
Like you
We
knocked
even
over the
did
whole stand.
no, we even tried just a left-handed softball throw for distance.
Yeah.
Embarrassing.
Yeah.
You take a bunch of big muscle strong dudes and just watch this sissy toss.
Crazy, dude. That's is the best. Teaching guys how to box and shit. Like it's always easier to teach chicks. Like
Really?
girls could learn so easy, and Jiu-jitsu is different because you get oppressed quickly. Like it's like you can't breathe, and it's like you need to go. Okay, no, I need to learn how to move. But like in box, it's like one of those things. You're a 12-year-old boy. You're supposed to know how to do flamenco, how to speak Spanish. You're supposed to know karate like Bruce Lee. You're supposed to like, and you either get after knowing some things. You're like fuck, James Bond knows a lot of shit, or else you're like just pretend I can kind of do or whatever. It's like, and I was like, you gotta find your truth in the road. You know, you gotta yeah, make your right choice. But like, the other thing I thought about is like multitasking. This idea like that it's a superpower to be able to multitask, and it's nice if life gets overrun, you can do that. But like, you can't get to where we're talking about by multitasking. You can't throw a
No.
hammer well by multitasking. You have to be 100% in the fucking energy of the hammer, I would think.
Right. No, it's exactly right. Like that's the beauty of those sports things, right? Is I think so much of our day is spent now cerebrally, like,
Mhm.
in our heads and on the phone and digitally doing all these things that not everyone speaks that language of taking that time to get back present with their body. And I notice whenever I do that, especially like through like a fucking long bursting cardio session,
Mhm.
you're not anywhere else.
Mhm.
And that pulls everything back in and regrounds and recenters and allows it to be there. I mean, I think all that shit is
So good.
so critical for us to
When I
to be able to improve.
when I get done with that too, there's no time when I feel like I'm so glad that I've done that, except after a time when I thought I was going to suffocate because I worked so hard. Right. And then you're like, God damn, this is, good practice.
You know what's amazing, man? Like I my base self is so fucking naturally lazy. And it's amazing to me that it still is.
Yeah.
Like after all these fucking years, like there's some parts of me that just aren't any different. Like the base self of me that's somewhat of that is a hustler.
Hmm.
Like, he's never gonna fucking go away.
Right.
I have to figure out how to use those tools to my
Yeah.
advantage instead of being shitty.
Get one voice, get loud, control the volume of
Yeah.
the voices is what I find I need to do.
And man, the volume of the voice that wants to do nothing, the
Yeah.
volume of the voice that wants to sit around
That's
and
me.
get high and watch movies and do jack shit
Yeah.
is always there.
I mean,
I've always figured that over time, like as being as disciplined as I've been with training and morning routine, and I
as
get
you
my
will.
ass up in the morning, that like he would just not show up, right? That
Yeah.
I didn't have to tell that voice to go fuck himself
Yeah.
every day, but yet
I'm
here we
doing this
are.
anyway. You have no account in my action. Like this,
Right.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that voice doesn't get a vote. It's like, at this point, the voice is still there. It's not as loud as it would have been gaining mastery over it,
Well, I
but
got
it's
good
somewhere in the
practice
back
not
like,
paying
"Hey
attention.
man,
I got
hey
good
man, you
practice
want
not
to get
paying
fucking
attention.
high?"
I go, thank you for sharing. Can we hear from somebody else that wants to
That's
be
right.
positive today?
Yes, I see you.
Yep.
No, it doesn't matter. We're still
Yeah.
doing this
Still
thing.
doesn't. Yeah. Yeah. It's a weird thing being a human because do you know another animal that there's a part of it that is not on its side? You know what I mean? It's like I
No,
got a
man, that
part of
part
me
of the
that doesn't have
self-conscious
my
is
best
a
interest.
really interesting thing that we build. I look at that voice, right? Like whatever that
Yeah.
voice is inside of us, and I think I kind of try to think of it as like a coach. I know for
Right.
me, like this negative self-talk voice, a lot of it sounds a lot like high school coaches and
Right.
perhaps my dad or any of this, right? And for me, that negative self-talk doesn't always mean a negative outcome for me because I came through that world with success.
Right.
And
There's
so
a
I could
there's a
always
part
take the
people.
criticism as not like really targeting me. It's more
Yeah,
fire.
shame. People talk a lot about shame, and I go, well, fucking shame helped me change horrible behavior. Shame was the
Yeah,
correct
same.
representation of what I had just done, and I needed. I mean, I needed that also. So I'm now. Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, the shame is the recognition of the thing, but the love is what keeps me doing it to not be that guy.
Mm.
Right. But hearing that voice in my head and then being able to realize that like, oh fuck, that voice isn't mine. Like I can hear that voice and it didn't come from me. It came from, I can see it now. It's parts of it are my dad and parts of it are these coaches I had and parts of it is this. And then like once I can see where it stems from, I can say, oh shit, well then it doesn't get a vote any more than I want it to.
What age were you when you started being present to this committee, these other entities, or ideas that bounced around in your head, like that there's, you know what I mean, that there's other voice that you can be a watcher of your mind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Man, I would say it came on in chunks. There was one part of me as an athlete that was able to look at things a certain way, but not the rest of
Right.
my life.
Yeah, I get that.
And then once kind of that thing got taken from me with the sports part, and I got thrown into the deep water and really didn't know how to manage any of my shit. The self-awareness thing is really what I leaned into, is being able to listen to why I feel this way and what can we do about it and what actions can be taken. And if I do take actions over a long term, can I change the way I feel or look at situations? And it felt like I could. And then, once I got to that realization, it kind of has stemmed into, well, all these voices aren't necessarily me, right? The same way that Highland Games isn't me, it's a thing I did. And the same way not being able to do the Highland Games doesn't make me not a world champion.
Right.
Right. So it's just all these environmental things and consequences of the actions I've taken and the experiences I've had. And so hearing that voice from that perspective of the, like, that's that bass voice inside, but now choosing the voice that I really want to listen to is different than allowing that one to keep driving.
Would you think that the first time that you started paying attention to that was because the injury, because life had forced you to stop, and then when you're
Yep.
forced to stop, you've got to look at the emotions that
Yeah,
come
that
up.
was my,
Okay.
my dad had passed away, and that shook some things up for me, like in 2014. And that was just how quickly it could go, like 11 months,
Right.
fucking fade out. Right. And then when I got hurt, I'd never really had a brush with my own mortality before that. And that was a real moment of like, oh shit, at some point, this machine's not going to work anymore. And then I don't know what to do if it doesn't.
Right.
And so I had to sort some things out.
It's hard when you pour your whole self into the discipline of the thing.
Mm.
That's the question everybody has to come up against.
Yep.
It's important and
No,
unavoidable.
man, it shook me, it shook a lot of me to realize that, and even now being so grateful that my body works in any capacity it does again, that I can be healthy, that I can train again, that I can
Yeah.
do new things and be excited to be out with friends and walk, even just go walk in the fucking sun. Cause I remember begging for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, like,
Right,
making
then
sure I keep that gratitude.
your hip burns so much that you can't walk more than 100 yards and all
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And then you're just shitty with everyone around you too, because
Or
then
you
you're in
don't know that
pain.
you're in pain all the time.
Right.
Yeah. It's like you're at a 7 all day, but you don't know that because you're at a 7 all day and that's
Right.
0 for you.
Yeah,
God.
it's like putting on this heavy backpack every day that no one else has, that you're just carrying around. And that was really the first kind of, view that I ever got on kind of having an empathetic view of depression. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
fuck, it's that.
Because you
It's
didn't
that
know it before
feeling that
then.
just never goes away. But the chronic pain thing was the first time I'd ever had a thing that there wasn't anything I could do about. It was just there.
Right.
That, like, oh, this is how we live now.
Oh. I mean,
And
that's
so,
one of the things that starts going, when there's not space in your joints and you're like, fuck, man, milk inflames me a little, I guess. And if I have, I mean, and I can notice a guy, I hate it, but I notice a difference in my pain levels depending
yeah.
on how I treat my damn self.
Yeah, and look, I think there's a reason the reason we age the way we do, right? I think our brains have a chance of getting smarter our entire lives.
Right.
Our bodies at some point
Right.
fucking go downhill.
Yeah. They're
I
like,
don't
you
know what
better be
year
smart
that
enough.
happens, right? But like I sure as fuck am not as resilient as 25-year-old
Right.
me.
And that's the deal, right? The body goes, you're resilient here. You don't have to pay attention to this. And then you get to a point where you're like, you better start paying attention to this because your resilience is waning and you better
Mhm.
be smarter as you carry this bitch forward.
Yeah, I think as you leave puberty and all the wild years that you're supposed to fucking fight and rampage and do all this
Right.
shit, that it's like, all right, motherfucker, guess what? You're gonna get a little sore. Guess what? You're hungover now. Guess what? Like,
Life
it
shifts.
starts making you fucking catch up to those things and realize that, like, oh man, I need to treat my body better
Yeah.
so that
And
it
just
sticks
staying
around.
active teaches me of what it is. It's like, I don't know that I can't do a somersault until I try. Right? When's the
Yeah.
last time I did one, or whatever the thing is. And I remember a few years back, before he passed, my buddy Harrison was this older dude. I mean, in his 90s, older, but we'd go to the gym and work out because when I go, he'd be looking at his shoes, and it's a confidence thing. And then we'd juggle and shit when we were there, and I'd get him to squat in a ball, and he'd come out of it like different. And I thought, man, we're all doing the same thing in this goddamn gym. Whether you're going to compete in a professional level or whatever, we're trying to get our bodies optimized to the life that we want to live. He just wants to get up and down out of the chair, be able to go for a walk. Like, it's all of that. And so, like, that's the thing. until life pushes back against you, you don't know that. But I know that if I build my capacity for that resiliency early, when I have the energies to do that, that carries dividends that are like fortunes that you just can't imagine. I mean,
No,
because
it
what
for
is it
sure
otherwise? I mean,
does.
everybody that you look at that's old, it's like I've been thinking about that lately, dude. They got catheters, they had to get an appendectomy. I mean, all the goddamn things that you don't know that they're carrying. It's like you gotta be a tough son of a bitch to be over like 65. I couldn't even imagine. We'll see what
Dude,
happens.
that's my mom, man. She's, she'll turn 70 later this year.
Yeah.
And yeah, even with my dad passing away, that this thing with Parkinson's recently has been her wake up call. So she's down like 60 pounds, and
Oh,
and what she said was, is that she lives by herself,
yeah.
and she doesn't want choices taken from her.
Right.
She
Right.
doesn't want to be told where she has to live or who she has to live with or do these other things or feel like a burden on the people around her or any of this, right? And like,
Yeah.
so man, having her here for that week and like watching her cruise around the gym all day up here and like train with me, and then like get in the sauna and get in the cold tub on her own, and watched her read through Kelly's new book, Built to Move. Like,
Oh,
man, felt really good. It
good.
felt really good that like I think I've shepherded at least some part of that journey
Oh yeah.
toward it.
I mean, she's
Um,
not doing that without you. You
right.
know, isn't that a trip? How now your mom? I mean, that's what happens. They start to get led by our example after they gave us so much and growing us into what I mean. This life is a wild thing. The way these relationships
And it's
form through
funny because
generations.
yeah, I pushed it for a long time, right? I can remember being excited about figuring out my health and like
Oh
figuring out some awareness and
yeah.
really trying to like, these things will help you. Please do these things.
Hmm.
Watch what you're eating, blah, 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 blah. Let's get you training or any of this. And it never clicked. And it wasn't really until she had her own moment and then I'm just doing,
Yeah.
that she's really sparked interest in being like, I see what you're doing and I want to do more of
It's
it.
cool. There's medicines for Alzheimer's if you catch it early enough that they can retard its growth a little bit, right? The
Well, yeah, with the
manifestation.
Parkinson's, it's just really a matter of kind of figuring it out, as
Yeah.
it's a neurological thing that does get worse. And I mean,
Right.
that was one of the questions I had for her, right? Is like, is this what's going to get you?
So one of my friends is a doctor up in Washington, and she studies Parkinson's, and she uses dogs that they hunt like truffles with or something. And she's working on this thing about if we could sniff out Parkinson's early before there's manifestation, because that's how people know about it is because it starts to manifest. And then once you start to manifest, it can be too late if you're older when it started. Like it could
Hmm.
get so advanced that the medicines won't help you because it's already expressed fully. But if they could check it early, they could get you on medications so that it wouldn't express until you're 90 years old, until when it doesn't matter anymore. And
Hmm.
yeah, I just wonder what kind of help there is because I've had a couple of my dad's friends that passed that way and ALS and rough. It's rough
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Rough. That's, a big journaling this, the past couple weeks, right? I turned 40 early April, and the anniversary of my father passing away is the day before my birthday. So they always kind of just fall right around the right time. And, man, seeing my dad, go from being my dad and being this physically able guy who's really capable, that I considered this strong man, um, just fade out over 11 months and get small and weak and can't go outside, and just see like his life trap further down to less options and less things he can do,
Right.
less ability. Like I'm aware now that like that's a way that this story can end. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
that's a way things can go for me, as I get sick and shit goes south, and then you're fucking trapped inside, and like if that's one of the options, that this life has a way to go, man, I'm making it damn sure worth the ride. Cause I'm living my life knowing that I'm gonna die a certain, that it's coming.
Sure.
And that damn sure keeps me fired up to keep trying and being my best, and taking advantage of the time that I have to do while I can, because the time's coming that I won't.
Right. Sure. Yeah. It all shifts. And and also like we got, especially in Western culture, we got an idea about death. We got a conversation about that that's not spoken of in very many perspectives, right? And,
No.
and and there's an idea about that's a threshold we walk over and maybe become everything. You know, your soul washes into and is knitted into the fabric of all the other souls of the world, and we become omniscient and fully knowing of our loved ones. And I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, look, I have no idea what the next chapter is. I know that I can't fully understand it and probably won't ever be able
Yeah.
to. Um,
I ain't
Based
scared of
on my beliefs, I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
You know, that it'll be something, but I'm also aware of what a gift, like what a gift this time is that I get to have a physical form.
Sure.
Because there's so much time after I'm dead, which is almost forever, by the way. And then the time before I was alive is also almost forever.
Right. Right.
And so in this short window that this energy that is Matt Vincent, like, gets to have a fucking spark and get to drive this machine around, like, man, I'm fucking going for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that thing about, I mean, I guess I think about it and I think, it all expires. Right. And it's like, what echoes past you, you know, when the reaper comes, how well have you sown the seeds that are going to be, you know, is what I've left going to be as valuable as me being here? Is it, you know, what does that look like? You know, what's your responsibility to humanity in those, you know, there's a lot of questions in that. And there's a lot of just like, well, let's just, all of it leads to the right place. Get after it and do the most good you can and grow the best you're able. You know, why? Because it's a benefit to everybody, because they see that maybe they can too, or they're going to eat from your garden. Whatever it is good.
Brother, yo, I
Love
can't
you.
thank you enough for your time, man.
Shit, man. We're going to have to talk about Mando sometime, you know.
Yo, we definitely need to. Let me catch up on it and we'll run this
Right.
again.
I can't wait.
Yeah, dude. I love you, man. Anything you want to, where can people reach you, follow you? I know, man, you're such a loving dude.
Well, you can find me. I'm easy to find. Tait Fletcher. Tait is my first name. And Instagram or any of that kind of stuff. Caveman Coffee is
Yeah, what's up with Caveman Coffee?
company of mine, and Lacey Mackey and Keith Jardine, and we're running a bunch of cans. We just got loaded up with I don't know, 1,000 cases of nitro or something that we're moving. And if you want to go to the site, cavemancoffee.com, and you can get 20% off by putting in Tait Fletcher and give us a whirl. And
right on.
Mando roast out there too for Mandalorian fans.
Yeah.
I heard that there's going to be like a heavy roast or something to that degree. You know, maybe an immortal roast. Maybe we'll do that.
Oh, I dig that.
Yeah.
I dig that. Brother, love you, man. It's been a trip knowing you as long as we have.
My best to Bonnie, and we'll talk soon, huh?
I will.
All right.
Love you, brother.
Love you too. Later.